You are standing at the edge of a village as the light leaves the sky. The day is folding into itself, the way cloth folds when you set it down on a table. Around you, the air holds the last warmth of afternoon, a warmth that will be gone within minutes, replaced by the cool breath that rises from the earth as the sun withdraws. You can feel it already, this transition, in the slight shift of temperature on your skin. It is sometime in the 14th century, or perhaps the 13th. The distinction matters less than it might seem. You are in a place where time moves differently than it does for you now. You are in a village whose name you do not know, in a country whose borders are drawn differently than the maps you have seen. The important thing is that you are here, and it is dusk, and the day's work is ending. If you feel inclined, you might leave a comment telling us where you are and what time it is. Because somewhere in the world, someone else is falling asleep to these same words. And there is something oddly comforting in that. We are separated by centuries from the people we are about to meet, but we are also drawn together now, you and I, and whoever else is listening in the darkness of their own room. We are all witnesses to a story about how people loved each other when the world was very different. And somehow, that makes the listening feel less lonely. The village itself is not much to look at by the standards you know. There is no electricity here. There are no cars, no streetlights, no hum of machinery underneath everything. What there is instead is the sound of animals settling for the night. The gentle low calls of cattle being brought in, the rustle of chickens finding their roosts, the distant bark of a dog that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. There is smoke rising from chimneys, the smell of it mixing with the smell of earth and manure and grain. It is not an unpleasant smell, though it is far from sterile. It is the smell of life being lived closely together, of survival being managed day by day. The buildings around you are not what you might expect. They are smaller than you imagined, most of them. Built from wood and thatch and mud, they lean toward each other slightly, as if tired. The largest structure in the village is the church, a stone building at its centre, and even this is modest by later standards. But it stands tall enough that it catches the last light of the sunset, and it will be the last thing to receive the darkness. For a few moments longer, the cross at its top gleams. The people you see moving through the village now are slowing down. A woman carries a water bucket, moving from the well toward one of the houses. Her movements are efficient, practiced. A boy herds sheep, his stick barely necessary because the animals know the path home as well as he does. An old man sits on a log outside a building, and you realize it must be the alehouse, the gathering place. He sits very still, watching the sky change colour. No one hurries. There is no hurrying left to do today. This is the world in which love happens. This is the world into which you are stepping. And it is important that you understand from the beginning that love here is not separate from all of this. It is not separate from the animals and the smoke, and the stone church, and the woman carrying the water bucket. It is not something that happens in isolation, in quiet rooms, in private moments. Love in this world is woven into the fabric of survival. It is tangled up with property and family and the continuation of the village itself. It is tangled up with the church and its rules, with the seasons and their demands, with the simple fact that people live in close quarters and every choice anyone makes affects everyone else. The woman with the water bucket, for instance. She is perhaps 17 years old, though age is a less precise thing here than it is for you. She may be betrothed already, or she may be waiting. Her father may have already agreed to a match, or he may still be negotiating. She does not think about love in the way you think about love. Or perhaps she does, but she does not think about it in the same way, with the same sense that love is something separate from duty, something that might contradict what is practical. For her, what is practical and what is desired are often the same thing, or at least they are bound up together so tightly that it is difficult to pull them apart. The boy herding the sheep is younger, perhaps 12 or 13. He is not yet thinking about marriage, but the time is coming when he will need to think about it. If his family has land or a trade, there are plans already being made. If they do not, he may need to wait, or he may need to leave the village and make his fortune elsewhere. Love, for him, is still something that happens in songs and stories. It has not yet become real, has not yet pressed itself into his daily life with the weight of actual consequences. That will come. The old man at the alehouse has already lived through all of this. He has probably loved several women in his time. He may have had a wife who died and then married again, or he may have had only one wife and carried her memory with him for decades. He has seen his children grow and marry and have children of their own. He has seen the patterns repeat. He sits and watches the sky, and he knows that the patterns will continue, that there are young people in the village right now experiencing the first stirrings of what he experienced, and that they too will grow old and sit and watch the sky and know how it all turns out. The church in the distance will be central to all of their stories. Everything that happens between a man and a woman in this village, or any village like it, will be overseen by the church in some way. The church will pronounce whether a marriage is valid. The church will determine whether a relationship is sinful. The church will, through its priests and its doctrines, shape the rules by which love must follow if it is to be acceptable. And yet, and this is one of the things that will become important as we move deeper into this story, the church also cannot prevent people from loving. It can regulate love, but it cannot eliminate it. It can set rules around courtship and marriage, but it cannot stop a person from feeling what they feel. The darkness is coming faster now. You can feel it in the air. The colours of the sky are deepening, moving from gold to orange to purple to the deep blue that comes just before true night. The animals are almost all inside now, or heading that way. The woman with the water bucket has reached her house, and light spills out from an opening. Candlelight perhaps, or lamplight made from animal fat. It illuminates her figure in the doorway for a moment, and then she steps inside and the light is diminished. What will happen in this village over the next moments and hours is what happens every evening. People will gather around fires. They will eat simple food. They will talk, and in their talking there will be gossip. They will discuss who is matched with who might marry soon, who has caught whose eye. These conversations will not be idle. They will matter. They will shape what happens next. They will determine, in some cases, the course of people's lives. But for now, in this moment, the village is in transition. It is neither fully day nor fully night. It is the time when anything might still happen, when the light still touches the highest points of the buildings, when you can still see far enough to make out faces, when voices still carry clearly on the air. It is the dusk, and the dusk is a threshold. You are standing in it, and you are about to cross over. The concept of courtship in this world will seem strange to you. It will not match the stories you know, or the expectations you carry with you about how people meet and fall in love. There is no dating. There are no dates. There is no framework in which a man and a woman go out together for the purpose of getting to know each other and deciding if they are compatible. The very idea would be strange, foreign. Compatibility is not the point. The point is family and inheritance, and the continuation of lineage, and the continuation of the village itself. And yet, and this too is important, people in this world do fall in love. They do look at each other across a room and feel something shift inside them. They do find ways to touch each other's hands. They do speak in metaphor and symbol to each other. They do write letters and send tokens. They do all of these things not because they are different from you, not because they do not feel what you would feel, but because they are working within the constraints of their world. They are making what they can out of what they are given. This is what you are about to learn about as you slip deeper into sleep, as you drift further from your own time and place and into this medieval village at dusk. You are going to learn what it felt like to want someone when the entire structure of your society was arranged against the possibility of choosing freely. You are going to learn what it meant to love when marriage was a contract first and an emotional bond second, or perhaps an emotional bond much further down the list, after property and family and obligation. You are going to learn what forms love took when it could not take the forms we know. The darkness is almost complete now. You can barely make out the buildings anymore, but the smell is still there, and the sounds are still there, even though they have changed. The daytime sounds of work and efficiency have given way to the evening sounds of settling and gathering. You hear voices now, carrying through the air. You hear the sound of a door opening. Someone is walking toward the alehouse where the old man sits. Someone is walking toward home. Someone is, in this moment, seeing someone else. And the seeing will matter It will have consequences. It will be the beginning of a story that will unfold over weeks or months or years. You are here in this village. You are standing in the dusk, and you are about to learn that love, even in a world so different from your own, is still a force that moves people. It is still something that people seek out, even when seeking it is dangerous or forbidden. It is still something that people protect, something that people write about, something that people carry with them across a lifetime. The forms change, the constraints change, the possibilities change, but the fundamental human impulse to connect with another person, to feel known by them, to be chosen by them, that does not change. Let yourself sit with this for a moment. Let yourself feel the cool air on your skin as the sun disappears completely. Let yourself hear the voices and the animals and the sounds of the village settling into evening. Let yourself imagine what it might have been like to be young in a world like this, when every feeling had to be carefully hidden or transformed into something else, when love had to be conducted in secret or in symbol, or in the narrow spaces that tradition allowed. Let yourself imagine what it might have been like to know that your life, who you would marry, where you would live, what would happen to you, was not entirely in your own hands, and to love anyway. The medieval world was not a world of freedom. It was not a world where you could chase your desires without restraint. It was a world of obligation and hierarchy and tradition. It was a world where your place in society was largely determined by who your parents were, and where your future was negotiated by other people for purposes you did not always understand. And yet, within that world, people found ways to experience what every human being experiences: the pull of attraction, the possibility of connection, the longing to be understood by another person, the wish to be chosen, to be seen, to matter to someone in a particular way. This is where we begin. Here in this village at dusk. Here in this moment, when the light is leaving and the evening is beginning, and people are gathering and the day is ending. This is where courtship begins, though you will not see anything that looks like courtship yet. What you will see is people going about their lives. What you will see is the structure within which all the loving will happen. What you will see is the world itself, the physical world, the social world, the spiritual world that holds all of this together. And from understanding this world, you will be able to understand what love meant and how people loved when the world was very different from the one you know. So stay here with me. Let yourself drift deeper into this medieval village. Let the sounds of the evening carry you. Let the cool air settle around you. Let the darkness come, and know that you are safe, that you are only dreaming, that you are only listening to the story of how people loved a very long time ago. And as you listen, perhaps you will begin to understand something about love itself, something about the way it works beneath all the systems and rules and structures that try to contain it. Perhaps you will begin to understand that love is not so much about the freedom to choose as it is about the act of choosing anyway, in whatever circumstances you find yourself in. Perhaps you will learn something that speaks to you, something that makes sense in your own life, even though your life is so different from the lives you are about to learn about. The village at dusk is where our story begins. Settle into it. Feel it. Know that you are not just hearing about this world, you are in it now. And as you fall asleep, as you drift away into the deepest part of your rest, the story of medieval love will be there, waiting for you, ready to unfold. The evening has deepened by the time you are drawn inside. The village sounds fade as you cross the threshold of a stone house. Not the grandest dwelling you have seen, but substantial. A family of means, the kind that owns land and keeps livestock beyond what they consume. The door closes behind you and the temperature drops. Stone holds the chill of night differently than air does. It seems to emanate from the walls themselves, a deep and patient cold. Your eyes adjust to the interior. A central hearth glows with banked coals, not yet built up to evening flames. The light is amber and thin, casting long shadows across a wooden table that dominates the room. The table is worn smooth by use, years of hands and elbows, meals and work and conversation, all pressed into its surface. You can smell the lingering smoke from countless fires, and beneath that, the smell of bread. Always bread in these houses, the ghost of it in the very wood and stone. A man sits at the head of the table. This is Thomas, the father. He is not old, perhaps 50 winters, with the kind of weathered face that comes from seasons spent outdoors and seasons spent worrying about seasons spent outdoors. His hands are large and scarred, but they rest on the table with a certain deliberation, as if, even in stillness, he is making a claim on the space around him. His wife, Margaret, sits to his left. She is perhaps 10 years younger, her face less marked by sun, but equally marked by thought. A daughter, Catherine, stands near the hearth, stirring something in a pot. The smell that rises from it is savoury. Onions, herbs, something with meat in it. But Catherine is not the reason you are here. The reason you are here is upstairs. Or rather, the reason you are here is in the silence between these people. A silence that has weight and intention. Thomas speaks first, and his voice is low and steady. He is not a man given to raising his voice. The messenger came from the Hartwell estate today, he says. You are positioned near the wall, neither fully part of this family nor entirely separate, as if you belong to the shadows themselves. They have a son, Edward, 23 winters old, has 300 acres in his own right, beyond what his father holds. He pauses. His eyes move to his wife, then away. They asked about our Catherine. Margaret's face does not change. She has heard this before, you realize. This is not a new conversation. It is a continuation of one that has been happening in smaller moments. Glances across the breakfast table, words exchanged while working in the garden, the long pause before sleep at night. "What did you tell them?" she asks. "Nothing yet," Thomas says. "I told the messenger we would consider the proposal, that we would send word within the month." He shifts his weight and the chair creaks beneath him. "It is a good offer. The Hartwell lands border ours on the eastern side. Adjoining would be advantageous." The word hangs in the air. Advantageous. Not Catherine would be happy. Not it is what she wishes. Advantageous. The word belongs to property and inheritance, to the mathematics of possession and consolidation. You understand, standing in this room with its amber light and its patient cold, that this is how the world works, has always worked, will always work. Catherine continues stirring. Her movements have become slightly faster, but her face remains toward the pot, her expression invisible to her parents. She is 20 years old. You notice this detail because it matters. In this time, in this place, 20 years old is both very young and running out of time. Every year that passes is a year in which she remains unmarried, a year in which her value, and this is what it is, value, measured and calculated like grain at market, perhaps diminishes slightly. Margaret sets her hands flat on the table, and you notice they are work-worn like her husband's, though in different ways. Where his hands are marked by outdoor labour, hers bear the smaller scars of daily life. Small burns from the hearth, calluses from spinning, the permanent staining from work with dyes and plants. "The Hartwell boy," she says. "What is known of his character?" Thomas shifts. He considers this. He is reported to be steady, not a drunkard, not known to beat his wife. He manages the estate competently. He pauses. He is not handsome, but he is not marked by illness. This is the catalogue of masculine virtue in the world you are inhabiting. Steadiness, sobriety, absence of cruelty, competence, health. These are the qualities that matter. These are what a father calculates when a messenger arrives with a proposal. There is no mention of whether Edward is kind, whether he has read any books, whether he tells jokes, or has any particular passion or skill beyond the ordinary management of land. Steadiness will do. Steadiness and the 300 acres. And the dowry, they ask? Margaret's question is practical. This is her domain, the negotiation of goods and value, the movement of property from one family to another. This is how she has spent 20 years learning to think, and you understand now that she is good at it. Thomas pulls a piece of parchment from his lap. When did he place it there? You did not see him do it. He must have been holding it all along, waiting for this moment in the conversation. 300 silver marks, he says, and the furnishings for a household. The usual things. Linens, a spinning wheel, a loom, cookware, a bed frame. Margaret's expression shifts slightly. She is calculating. You can almost see the numbers moving behind her eyes. "That is not unreasonable," she says slowly. "If the marriage is as secure as the 300 acres suggests, I have already increased our holdings significantly in Catherine's name," Thomas says. He has the tone of someone who has already done the work of deciding. The southern field, the apple orchard, together with what the Hartwell estate brings, she will not go to them empty-handed. From the hearth, Catherine's stirring has stopped. The wooden spoon rests in the pot. You can see the tension in her shoulders now, the particular way her body has gone very still. She is listening. Of course she is listening. This conversation is about her, but she is not being addressed directly. You wonder if this is always the case, or if sometimes fathers summon their daughters and discuss these matters face to face, with the daughter's voice included in the conversation as something other than silence. "Have you spoken to her?" Margaret asks, and there is something in her voice now, a careful quality, as if she is asking a question she already knows the answer to. "Not yet," Thomas says. "I wanted to understand first whether we should proceed, whether the offer was worthy of her acceptance." Worthy of her acceptance. The phrasing is careful. It suggests that Catherine will have some say in the matter, though both of you standing in the shadow and Margaret sitting at the table, understand that her say is limited. She can refuse, perhaps. There are stories of girls who have refused, who have been so vehement in their refusal that a father has relented. But such refusal carries a weight. It means remaining unmarried, perhaps forever. It means the label of difficult, of willful, of not properly obedient. It means becoming a burden on the family, a resource that has not been properly deployed. Better to accept. Better to understand that marriage is not something that happens to you because you wish it. It is something that happens because it is right, because it is the order of the world, because it benefits your family, and because your family is the only container that has ever held you, and its welfare is more real to you than your own individual happiness could possibly be. Margaret stands. "I will speak to her tonight," she says. Not tonight in the sense of this coming night, you realize, but in the private language of husband and wife. She means before sleep, in the darkness of their own chamber, or perhaps as they prepare for sleep, brushing out hair and letting down the careful arrangements of the day. She means in a moment of relative privacy. "We will prepare her." Thomas nods. He returns the parchment to his lap and then stands as well. The conversation is finished. There are no words of affection between them, no touch, nothing that would suggest romantic feeling. But there is an accord between them, a kind of partnership. They have been married, you sense, for a long time. Long enough that they move through these decisions together without needing to explain everything to each other. Catherine is still by the hearth. The pot steams, the smell of food rises. None of you move toward the table yet. The meal is not ready, or perhaps it will not be ready until this moment has fully passed, until the three of you can sit down together and pretend that nothing has changed, or that everything has always been this way. The night deepens. You feel it outside, beyond the walls, in the absence of sounds that belong to daytime. The birds have stopped. The insects have stopped. There is only the occasional sound of wind and the settling of stone and the small domestic sounds of a family in a house. Thomas leaves the room. You hear his footsteps on wooden stairs. He is going up to the second floor where the family sleeps, where the marriage bed is, where Catherine will perhaps lie awake, thinking about the Hartwell estate and the young man named Edward, whom she has never met. Margaret moves to Catherine and puts a hand on her shoulder. Catherine does not turn. Her face remains toward the hearth, toward the fire that never fully dies. "The meal smells good," Margaret says quietly. "You have done well with it." Catherine's voice, when she speaks, is steady in a way that seems to cost her something. "Thank you, Mother." "We will talk tomorrow," Margaret says, "after the morning work. There are things you should know. Preparations." Catherine nods, and Margaret removes her hand. She leaves the room the way her husband left, with the quiet assumption of a woman who has lived long enough to understand that some things simply happen, and the best one can do is meet them with steadiness. Now you are alone with Catherine, though you are not supposed to be here, and she does not know you are here. You are a ghost in this room, a witness to a moment that belongs to her and her alone. She takes the pot from the fire with a cloth, carefully, moving it to the edge of the hearth where it will stay warm but not continue cooking. Her hands are young hands, unmarked by the deeper labour of running a household, though she is already learning. You can see the competence in the movement, the knowledge that has been transmitted from her mother and her mother's mother, the understanding of heat and timing, and the 1,000 small acts that keep a family fed. She sits at the table, just sits, does not eat, does not prepare plates, simply sits where her father has been sitting, her hands folded in front of her, and she looks at the fire. You wonder what she is thinking, whether she has already heard rumours of the Hartwell estate, whether her mother has mentioned, in passing, that it borders your own lands, whether she has seen this coming in the way that young women must sometimes see their futures coming, not as shock, but as inevitability finally arriving in the form of a messenger and a proposal, and 300 silver marks. The fire crackles. A piece of wood shifts. Sparks rise briefly and die. The economics of marriage are about land, ultimately. They are about the consolidation of holdings, the prevention of fragmentation, the strategic placement of a daughter into a family that will owe yours something in return. They are about the movement of property in the form of a dowry, the goods that a young woman brings to her marriage as a kind of compensation for the burden of feeding and housing and clothing her. If the dowry is large enough, it becomes an incentive. If it is small, it becomes an insult. In Catherine's case, the dowry is not small. Thomas has been generous. The southern field, the apple orchard, 300 silver marks. These are not the gifts of a man who sees his daughter as a burden. They are the gifts of a man who is invested in her success, in the strength of the alliance he is making. The Hartwell family will know this. They will understand that Thomas values his daughter highly enough to give her a substantial portion of his wealth, and they will respond accordingly. With the 300 acres in Edward's name, with the promise of stability, with the offer of a home that will treat her with respect, because she has been given respect in the form of property. This is the language in which marriages speak to each other. Not the language of love, though love may come, but the language of economics, of family alliance, of the careful movement of resources across generations. Catherine stands eventually. She serves herself a bowl of the stew she has made. She eats slowly, mechanically, as if she is not tasting it. The house settles around her. The fire burns lower. The night is fully here now, absolute, beyond the pale reach of the half-light. Tomorrow her mother will talk to her. Catherine will learn that the Hartwell family has money, that Edward is steady, that the marriage has been judged worthy, that preparations should begin. The fine spinning, the embroidery, the weaving of linens. The dowry goods must be prepared by her hands, at least in part. This is how a daughter shows her value, not just in property brought, but in skill demonstrated, in the proof that she is capable of running a household, of creating beauty and order, of being the kind of wife a man will not regret taking. The marriage will likely take place in spring, when the roads are better, and the feast can include foods that are fresh. There will be a contract signed. The priest will be involved. The church will bless the union. Catherine will be given away by her father, and she will move from one household to another. And she will become the wife of a man named Edward, whom she may or may not come to love. But all of that is in the future. For now, in this stone house with its amber light and its patient cold, Catherine finishes her bowl and sets it aside. She does not clear the table. That is work for tomorrow. She simply sits, and you sit with her, and neither of you speaks, because there is nothing to say. The world is as it is. The arrangements have been made. The pattern that has held for generations continues to hold. Outside, the March night is clear and very cold. The stars are bright in a way they will never be again once you return to your own time, your own place, your own understanding of what the world is. But here, in this moment, the stars are simply stars, and they shine on fields that have been arranged and rearranged, consolidated and divided, moved from father to daughter to husband across the centuries. The land remembers all of it. The stone walls remember. The table that bears the scars of 10,000 meals remembers. And Catherine sits in the firelight, and you sit beside her. And the night deepens into the kind of darkness that belongs only to places without electricity, without the interference of human light pollution, without the constant glow of modern life. The darkness is complete and total. And in that darkness, a young woman contemplates the marriage that has just been arranged for her. and you contemplate with her, feeling the weight of it, the inevitability of it, the particular sadness and practicality that is woven through the fabric of this world. The fire burns, the house settles. The night continues as it has continued for generations, as it will continue long after Catherine has moved to the Hartwell estate and borne children and become old herself, passing on the knowledge of how to run a household to her own daughters, who will in turn be arranged into marriages, whose dowries will be calculated, whose futures will be determined by the same economics that have just determined Catherine's. This is what dating was like in medieval times. Not the passion and the poetry that would emerge in noble courts, not the stolen moments that would characterize the lives of peasants, but the careful, sensible arrangement of families, protecting their interests through the strategic placement of their daughters. The marriage that begins not with love, but with calculation, and in which love, if it comes, arrives slowly, over years, as a kind of bonus to the practical partnership that was always the point. You find yourself drawn into a great hall now, and the transition from the merchant quarter to this place has happened so gradually you barely noticed the moment it began. The stone walls have grown higher, the air holds more warmth, though it is still the cool warmth of massive halls in autumn, not the heat of a living room. Above you, wooden beams cross and recross, darkened by centuries of smoke that rises from the central hearth. Somewhere above those beams is a roof of timber and tile, but you cannot see it in the dimness. What you see is the play of firelight across the beams, the way shadows pool in the corners and stretch across the faces of the people gathered here. You are in a court, not the royal court. You are not in the capital city, but the court of a great lord, whose holdings are substantial enough to warrant a castle and a household of perhaps 100 souls or more. The hall smells of wood smoke and damp stone, of rushes that cover the floor to absorb the mud and spillage of daily life, of candle wax and the lingering sweetness of honey mead. If you were to lie down on those rushes, you would feel them rough against your face, a little damp at the base, though crisp on top. And you would smell the earth beneath them, the herbs that have been woven in to mask the smell of whatever soaks into them. But you are not lying down. You are standing at the edge of the gathered crowd, and everyone here is looking toward a man who sits on a low stool with a stringed instrument resting against his body. He's not dressed like the serving people you saw in the kitchens. His tunic is fine wool in a deep blue that seems to absorb the firelight. There are small bells sewn into the hem of his sleeve, and they catch the light. His hair is long, past his shoulders, and he wears a chaplet of twisted cord around his brow. When he moves his head, the bells make a soft sound, almost gentle, almost musical, before he even touches his instrument. This is a troubadour. He has travelled here from perhaps 300 miles away, maybe more, moving from court to court along the networks of nobility that connect the scattered centres of culture and power. He is not a servant, though neither is he a nobleman. He occupies a strange space, one that would not exist in an earlier century, and one that is already beginning to shrink. He is a professional maker of poetry and music, a man whose skill with language and melody has earned him a place in the household, at least for tonight, and perhaps for a few weeks more. He is paid for his art, though he is also expected to accept gifts and patronage, to acknowledge the superiority of the noble families whose stories he tells and whose beauty he celebrates. The troubadour is about to perform what his patrons call chansons, or lays, love songs. This is what people have gathered to hear. The music drifts out into the corners of the hall, into the spaces where servants stand watching, where younger sons, who have not yet inherited lands, lean against the walls, where the unmarried daughters of the household sit in careful positions on benches, their posture perfect, their hands folded in their laps, or busy with needlework that they pretend to focus on. He begins to play, and the sound is a surprise. The lute is delicate and crystalline, nothing like the heavy instruments you might have expected. Each note seems to hang in the air separately before the next one arrives. The melody is intricate, the kind of melody that traces itself across your attention, that makes you forget other things. You find that your breathing has slowed to match the pace of the music. Your shoulders, which you did not realize were tense, have dropped away from your ears. When he begins to sing, his voice is not the voice of someone shouting across a market. It is intimate and shaped, trained to project just enough to be heard by everyone in the room, without the effort seeming crude or necessary. He is singing in the Languedoc, the southern language, the language of Occitania, of the Midi, though courts across all of France and even beyond are now learning to sing in this language, to understand it, to appreciate it as the language of love, the language in which you have lived your life, the language of the North, the Languedoc, seems suddenly rough and practical beside it. The song he is singing is about a knight who sees a lady. This is the beginning, always, of these songs. The knight sees the lady, and in that moment of seeing, something irreversible happens. He falls into what the troubadours call fins amours, or fine love, or refined love, or perfect love. The English speakers have begun to call it courtly love, though that term is not yet standardized. What matters is the transformation that happens in the night when he sees this lady's face, the curve of her neck, the way her veil catches the light. The troubadour is singing about this transformation as if it were a sickness and a cure at once, a wounding and a healing. You listen, and you begin to understand that this is not a song about marriage. It is not about economic alliance, or family strategy, or the production of heirs. It is about something that has no practical purpose at all, and yet It has been elevated into something sacred, something worthy of poetry. The knight in the song will never have the lady. The whole architecture of the feeling is built on impossibility. She is married to someone else, or she is so far above him in station that to even acknowledge his love would be to mock him. Or she is simply unavailable, because that is the nature of the game being played. The troubadour sings, and you feel something shift in the hall. The servants are watching the younger sons. The younger sons are looking away from the troubadour, suddenly absorbed in studying their own hands or the pattern of the floor rushes. And you notice, if you look carefully, that the young women on the benches are sitting even more still than before, their needlework forgotten for a moment, their eyes fixed on some distant point, as if they are imagining themselves into the role of the unattainable lady. This is the trap and the genius of courtly love. It is a system of feeling that elevates women, at least theoretically, while simultaneously making them impossible to have, even in theory. The lady in the song is pure, perfect, virtuous, and most importantly, beyond reach. She must remain beyond reach. The moment she became reachable, the whole system would collapse. The whole point is the longing, the impossible yearning, the artistic transformation of desire into poetry and music and code of behavior. The knight in the song must suffer. He must be thin from sleeplessness. He must make his feelings known to the lady in such a way that she can hear them without ever acknowledging that she has heard them. He must perform his devotion through actions and songs and verse that everyone hears and everyone pretends not to understand. He must accept that he will never have her, and this acceptance is the proof of his worthiness. To accept the unacceptable with grace, to transform pain into beauty, to love without hope of return. This is the mark of the perfect lover, the refined lover. And you sit in the hall and listen, and you feel something happening in your own chest. The song is beautiful. The music is beautiful. The idea that love could be something so elevated, so separated from the practical world of arrangement and dowry and property transfer and the production of children. This idea is seductive. It is revolutionary in a quiet way. It suggests that there is a part of the human heart that cannot be negotiated, cannot be bought, cannot be transferred from one family to another in a ceremony conducted by lawyers and priests. The troubadour shifts to another song. This one is a dialogue between the knight and the lady. She is responding to his devotion, but she is responding in such a way that nothing is actually happening. She is both encouraging him and denying him simultaneously. She praises his constancy. She suggests that his suffering is beautiful. She also makes it clear that she can never be his. And the knight, in his response, accepts all of this. He is grateful even for her rejection, grateful for the opportunity to suffer in the service of his love for her. The audience in the hall is absolutely silent now. Even the servants have stopped moving. You are beginning to understand the rules of this game, and the rules are complex. Courtly love is not a feeling that happens spontaneously. It is a code, a system of behavior, a philosophical framework that has been elaborated over the past century or so by troubadours and their patrons, by the great ladies of the courts who have learned to see themselves through the eyes of these songs. It has rules, written and unwritten. A gentleman does not fall in love with a woman of lower station. He falls in love with a lady above him, someone he can never have. His love must be secret, or at least it must be conducted in a language that allows for public performance while maintaining private denial. His love must be ennobling, must improve him morally and culturally. He must become more accomplished, more virtuous, more refined in his pursuit of this love. And the lady must be married, or at least not available for marriage to the man who loves her. She must acknowledge his devotion while maintaining absolute propriety. She must be the inspiration for his self-improvement and the reason for his suffering. She is often described as the superior of the man who loves her, even if she is technically lower in rank. The love relationship becomes one in which she is almost a feudal lord, and he is her vassal, bound to her service, receiving her favor as a reward. The language of courtly love borrows heavily from the language of feudal loyalty. To serve a lady is similar to serving a noble. Obedience is the foundation. Reward is rare and precious. The troubadour continues to sing, and the hall continues to listen. You notice that some of the musicians have joined him now, adding harmonies, keeping the rhythm on a drum that is played so softly it almost seems to be part of the building itself, part of the stone. The music is winding through the hall like smoke, and you feel it in your body, in the space beneath your ribs, in the back of your throat. What strikes you as you listen and feel yourself drifting further into the world the troubadour has created is the absolute separation of all of this from the world you saw before, the world of marriage negotiations and dowries and family strategy. In the kitchen, you heard the practical discussions of how to feed a household, how to manage resources. In the merchant quarter, you heard the language of contracts and trade and value. Here, in the hall, with the firelight dancing and the music filling every corner, that world seems to have vanished completely. You could almost believe that love is not an economic arrangement at all, that it is something that exists entirely outside of property and succession and power. But this is not quite true. The courtly love that the troubadour is singing about is not entirely separate from the world of power and property. It is built on the assumption that some people have the leisure to experience complex emotions. Only nobles can engage in courtly love, at least in its pure form. The knight has land, or the prospect of it, or connection to someone with land. The lady is already placed in the system of nobility and property. The troubadour himself, as he sings about their love, is being paid by their families, is enjoying their hospitality, is part of the machinery of their power structure. Courtly love is a luxury, like everything else in this hall. It is available only to those with enough wealth and security to afford the time to suffer beautifully for an impossible love. And yet, even knowing this, even understanding the economic foundation beneath the poetry itself is still beautiful. The music is still moving. The idea that love could be separated from property, even if only in the realm of imagination and song, is still revolutionary. The troubadour is suggesting to everyone in the hall that the human heart contains territories that cannot be mapped on any chart of inheritance or alliance, that there are feelings that belong to the soul and not to the purse, that beauty and desire and longing have a value that cannot be calculated in pounds or lands. You feel yourself drifting as the night deepens and the troubadour continues. The songs begin to blur together in your mind, but the feeling they create remains clear and distinct. You are in a world in which a person can be wounded by love and count that wounding as a mark of honor. You are in a world in which longing itself has been elevated into an art form. The knight in the songs you are hearing will never sleep through the night again. Never stop thinking of the lady he loves. Never expect that his love will be returned. And yet, this is good. This is the path to becoming noble in the truest sense, becoming refined, becoming worthy, becoming transformed. The fire in the hearth burns down as the night advances. The servants move quietly to add more wood, and the flames rise again, shadows leaping across the hall. The troubadour's fingers move across the strings of his lute, and the music comes forth as if from another world, a world in which love is a sickness that ennobles rather than corrupts, in which suffering is a mark of excellence, in which the impossible pursuit of an impossible love is the highest possible achievement a man can aspire to. And slowly, as the hours pass and the music continues, you begin to understand that this world exists in the imaginations and conversations of the people in the hall just as much as it exists in the songs themselves. The troubadours are not inventing courtly love. They are giving voice to an ideal that the nobility themselves are already beginning to live by, at least in the realm of imagination and gesture. The young men and women in the hall are learning how to feel. They are learning how to transform their feelings into poetry, how to conduct their emotions as if they were performances, how to see themselves through the eyes of a troubadour's song. This is the paradox of courtly love. It is artificial and constructed, a set of rules and behaviors that seem to have been invented rather than discovered. And yet, it is also deeply felt, genuinely experienced. The people in the hall are not cynical about it. They are not treating it as a game they do not believe in. Rather, they are learning to believe in it precisely by treating it as a game, by adopting the conventions and the language and the behaviors until those conventions become a second nature, until the imagined becomes the real. The troubadour eventually sets down his lute. The fire in the hearth burns lower. The servants begin to clear the rushes from the floor and lay down fresh ones for the morning. The audience in the hall disperses slowly, moving toward their chambers or their beds in the great hall, carrying with them the words and melodies they have heard, the visions of noble love and suffering and beauty. You move with them into the darkness, and as you go, you carry with you the understanding that you have been present at something important, something that is reshaping the way people think about their own hearts. You have been present in a hall where poetry has been elevated above practical consideration, where the impossible has been honored, where longing itself has been deemed worthy of a lifetime of devotion. And as you drift towards sleep, the music seems to continue, even in the darkness, winding through your mind like something that has always been there, like something that will remain there forever. You leave the great hall behind, the voices of troubadours fading into the distance. The stone passage grows cooler as you move deeper into the manor, and your footsteps echo against walls that have witnessed centuries of human arrangement. Ahead, through an open archway, you see the grey light of late afternoon filtering through narrow windows. Beyond the manor grounds, visible from where you stand, rises the church, its bell tower sharp against the dimming sky, its stones darker and older than the living quarters you have just left. This is where the secular world of courtly love transforms into something older and more binding, something that the church guards with all the authority it can muster. The path to the church gate is lined with hawthorn, and the white flowers are just beginning to bud, not yet fully open. You walk slowly, aware that this journey itself feels like a transition. The air smells of earth coming alive after winter, of stone dust, of something older and mineral that seems to rise from the ground itself. The church doors are wooden and massive, darkened with age, reinforced with bands of iron that have oxidized to a deep rust colour. Before you even enter, you understand that you are crossing a threshold from the human world of economics and passion and arranged alliances into the domain of the church, which has claimed authority over the very nature of marriage itself. Inside, the cold strikes you first. Medieval churches seem to hold winter within their stone walls, even when spring is arriving outside. Your breath becomes visible, small clouds that form and disappear as you stand in the nave. The light here is strange and filtered. Only a few narrow windows allow the sun to enter, and what light does come through is transformed into something almost aqueous by the thick glass. There are shadows in the corners that seem permanent, as though they have lived here for longer than the stones themselves. candles burn somewhere deeper in the church, and their smoke creates a thin haze that moves slowly through the air, carrying with it the scent of tallow and, from somewhere, the dried herbs used to freshen the stone floor. This is the world where marriage has been slowly, methodically brought under ecclesiastical control. You understand, standing here in this cold light, that the courtly love you witnessed in the great hall, all those poems and glances and carefully orchestrated conversations, exists only in the margins of what the church permits. Marriage, the church insists, is a sacrament, one of the 7, as important and binding as baptism or last rites. It cannot be entered into lightly, cannot be arranged in secret, cannot be made undone. The church has spent generations establishing this, fighting against the chaos of feudal practice, against the way nobles simply declared themselves married, against the way contracts were signed in shadowed corners without witnesses beyond the family. The process begins, as you learn from speaking with the priest, who moves through the transept tending to the candles, with the reading of the banns. 3 weeks before any marriage is to take place, the engaged couple must have their intention announced publicly during Sunday Mass. This is required, non-negotiable. The names are spoken aloud, and the entire parish hears them. Anyone who knows of an impediment to the marriage, a previous vow, a blood relation unknown to the couple, a prior betrothal, is obligated to come forward. The banns are a safeguard, a way for the church to ensure that chaos cannot flourish in secret corners, that no man can simply declare himself married to multiple women, that the lines of inheritance and legitimacy remain clear. You notice how the priest speaks of this with a kind of quiet satisfaction, as though order itself is a form of grace. Standing before the altar, you try to imagine what it feels like to have your name spoken aloud in this way, to have your private arrangements suddenly become public knowledge. There is something both protective and invasive about it. Everyone will know. Everyone in the village will know that you are to be married. Your mother will know. Your enemies will know. There is no taking it back after the banns are read. The church, in making marriage public, has made it real in a way that a secret exchange of vows in a private chamber could never be. And yet there is also vulnerability in this. If you have been secretly promised to someone else, if there is some impediment the family has failed to mention, this is the moment when it might be revealed. You stand in the church and feel the weight of 3 weeks of public scrutiny ahead of you. The consent of both parties. This is something the church has fought hard to establish as essential. It is not a natural position. In the earlier medieval period, marriages could be arranged entirely without the bride's involvement, children betrothed before they could even speak. But the church, perhaps surprisingly, has insisted that both the man and the woman must give their consent, must say yes in front of witnesses. This does not mean that arranged marriages disappear, does not mean that women gain any real power to refuse, but it does mean that the words must be spoken. At the moment of marriage, both must say their vows. The church's position is that marriage is a contract, and contracts require agreement from both parties. and that agreement must be witnessed and spoken. You imagine the tension in this for the bride who has no love for the man her family has chosen. The moment when she must nod her head, when she must say the words, when the priest is watching to see if the consent is real or merely performed. The church insists on the words. The church cannot see into hearts, and perhaps it does not wish to, because that would make its own position untenable. Now you move toward the place where the wedding ceremony itself will occur. The priest tells you about the rituals that accompany this sacrament, and you listen while walking slowly past the pillars of the nave. The ceremony takes place at the church door, not inside, interestingly, but at the threshold. You learn why. Marriage is still, in some sense, outside the sacred space of the church proper. The couple stands at the door, and the priest asks the questions, the challenging questions about impediments, about freedom from prior vows, about blood relations. The bride's father or guardian gives her to the groom, a physical transfer that makes visible the change in her status, her movement from one household to another. And then come the vows, the words that bind them together. The words matter greatly. You understand this as you stand at the church door, looking back at the altar, then out toward the world beyond. The formula is specific. I, John, take you, Margaret, as my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death us do part, according to God's holy ordinance. The bride speaks similar words. These are not words that the couple chooses. These are words prescribed by the church, words that have been spoken thousands of times before, words that will be spoken thousands of times again. There is something oddly comforting in this sameness, you think. Your feelings, your particular love or desperation or resignation are not the point. The words are the point. The words make it real. The priest then blesses the ring, if there is a ring, which depends on the family's wealth and tradition. The ring is placed on the fourth finger of the bride's left hand, the finger connected, the church teaches, directly to the heart by a vein. Whether or not this is medically true seems somehow beside the point. The church has decided it is true, and that is true enough for the purposes of marriage. The ring is gold if the family can afford it, a perfect circle, a symbol of the eternal nature of the bond. You think about the weight of metal on a woman's hand, how she will carry this visible proof of her married state forever, how she will twist it around her finger in moments of doubt, or habit, or loneliness. There is more. After the words are spoken, after the ring is blessed and placed, the priest blesses the couple, and then, in what seems almost anticlimactic, but is treated with great solemnity, the marriage is consecrated with the nuptial mass. The couple enters the church now, crosses the threshold they were just standing before. They kneel together before the altar, and the full weight of the church's power envelops them. This is a sacrament now, officially, irreversibly. In the eyes of God and man, they are married. There is no going back. There is no divorce possible, except by papal dispensation, which is rare, expensive, and usually available only to those with enormous power and resources. For most people, the vows spoken at the church door are the last words that will ever be spoken about whether they should be married to each other. You kneel in a pew and watch this imagined ceremony, and you understand the weight of it. The church has taken something that was once a family matter, a contract between households, and made it sacred, eternal, binding unto death. There is both power and horror in this. For women especially, there is horror. A bad marriage is a prison without walls, a fate that cannot be escaped. But there is also a kind of power in it. If the marriage is indissoluble, then neither the husband nor his family can cast her out. She has rights, however limited. She will be provided for. Her children will be legitimate. She has status. The church, in making marriage indissoluble, has also made it something that cannot be taken away by a whim or a desire for a younger woman or a better alliance. The priest speaks of the other element that must happen after the words are spoken, and you follow him back toward the rectory, where he points toward the manor house in the distance. The marriage bed must be blessed. This is a ritual that seems to belong to an older world, something pagan that the church has Christianized, but not entirely transformed. On the wedding night, the priest will come to the bedchamber, will sprinkle holy water, will speak prayers of blessing over the place where the couple will consummate the marriage. This consummation is necessary. Without it, the marriage is not complete, not truly binding. The vows spoken at the church door are important, essential even, but they are not enough. There must be physical union, and this union must be witnessed, or at least acknowledged, by the community. The bedding is the final step, the moment when the marriage becomes not just words and contracts and church authority, but something physical and real. You think about this as you walk back toward the manor in the gathering dusk. The evening is cooling, and the scent of wood smoke begins to rise from the chimneys. This bedding ceremony is something you have heard joked about in the Great Hall, something bawdy and comedic in its details. Young men carry the bride and groom to the bedchamber while laughing and singing, sometimes making ribald comments. The couple is undressed, sometimes partially, sometimes completely, and placed in the bed together, often with witnesses remaining in the room or just outside the door. It is humiliating, and also, in a strange way, a form of community participation in the marriage. Everyone knows what is about to happen. Everyone is complicit in it. The marriage is being sealed, not just by church blessing, but by community knowledge, by the involvement of those who live alongside them. But something else happens too. something that the church has made part of this ritual. Before the bedding, if it has been arranged, a priest comes to the bedchamber and blesses it. The priest sprinkles holy water on the marriage bed, speaks prayers asking that the union be fruitful, that children be born, that the couple remain faithful to their vows. The bed itself, the physical place where the couple will lie together, becomes consecrated ground, a place where God's blessing is explicitly invoked. This seems like it should make the subsequent bedding comic or ridiculous, but it does not. Instead, it makes it solemn. The bedroom becomes a kind of chapel. The act of physical union becomes, in the church's understanding, a religious act, a way of completing the sacrament that was begun at the church door. You are given a candle and asked to imagine walking through the manor in the evening, making your way to the bedchamber where this ritual is about to take place. Your candle casts shadows on the stone walls, and the sound of your footsteps echoes. The chamber is not large, not especially comfortable. The bed itself is a wooden frame with a feather mattress, though again, this depends on the family's wealth. There might be linen sheets, or there might be rough cloth. There is a small window with shutters, now closed against the night. The room is cold, always cold in a medieval building, but somehow the presence of so many people will warm it. They will fill the space, not just the couple, but servants, perhaps members of the bride's family, witnesses, and the priest, moving slowly toward the bed with his holy water and his prayers. The priest begins the blessing. His words are in Latin, or perhaps in a mixture of Latin and the local language, depending on how learned he is and how much he wishes the people present to understand. He speaks of fruitfulness, of the blessing of children, of the couple's faithful service to each other and to God. The holy water is sprinkled on the bed, and you smell it. Just water, really, but charged now with meaning. The priest's prayers seem to fill the room, seem to make the simple bedroom into something else, a place where sacred and profane meet, where the physical and the spiritual are somehow joined. Then the priest leaves, and the witnesses remain, and the couple is placed in the bed together. What happens next is less about passion than about duty, about fulfilling the requirement that the marriage be consummated. The witnesses wait to see if the groom emerges later with proof of the bride's virginity, evidence that will be displayed or discussed, that will confirm the marriage is valid and binding. If the bride was not a virgin, and this is discovered, the entire legal status of the marriage might be called into question. There is enormous pressure on her virginity, enormous significance placed on something that is biological but also social, something that the community has decided to care about deeply. You leave the bedchamber as the priest did, and you walk back out into the manor, back out toward the night. The ceremony is complete now. The marriage has been formally blessed by the church. The words have been spoken. The bed has been consecrated. In the eyes of God and the church and the community, these two people are now married, bound together in a union that death alone can break. The weight of this feels suddenly very heavy. You understand that you have moved from the lighter, more playful world of courtly love, where feelings mattered and poetry made sense of desire, into something much more serious, much more binding, much more absolute. The Church has spent generations bringing marriage under its control, transforming it from a matter of family negotiation into a sacrament, a sacred act. It has done this partly to impose order on chaos, partly to ensure the legitimacy of heirs and the clarity of inheritance, partly because it truly believes that marriage is a spiritual matter that requires ecclesiastical authority. In doing this, the Church has made marriage both more secure, more binding for everyone equally, regardless of their power or wealth, and more impossible to escape. A woman married by the Church's authority is married forever. This is security and prison simultaneously. You stand outside the church as the light fades completely, as the stars begin to become visible in the clear sky. You understand now that marriage in the medieval world is not a romantic matter, not primarily, even if romance and courtly love are swirling around the edges of it. Marriage is a sacrament, a legal contract, a binding of two people and their families together, a mechanism for the orderly transfer of property and the legitimate production of heirs. It is all of these things at once. The Church has made it solemn and inescapable, has imposed ritual and blessing and witnesses, has made it impossible to unknot what has been tied. And yet, standing here in the dark, you think about the practical reality of what happens after the blessings are spoken and the ritual is complete. Two people who may barely know each other now share a bed, share a life, must build something together from whatever they have in common and whatever they can come to accept about each other. The Church does not concern itself with whether they will love each other, whether they will find happiness, whether they can bear the weight of living together for perhaps 40 or 50 years. The Church has done its part. The marriage is blessed. Now it falls to the couple to figure out how to live. This transition from the world of courtly love to the world of sacramental marriage is profound. In the great hall, you heard about passion and feeling and the special love that elevates a person to nobility of spirit. Here, in the Church, you have encountered something different. Order, authority, ritual, the weight of centuries of ecclesiastical control. The marriage bed has been blessed, but not, perhaps, with great attention to whether the people in it will find any kind of comfort or joy in each other. The Church has done what the Church was meant to do. Now life, with all its complications and compromises and small daily acts of kindness or tolerance, must unfold. The church bell has stopped ringing. You leave the stone building into the returning world, your eyes adjusting to the brightness of afternoon, the smell of hay and livestock replacing the incense. The ceremony you witnessed is over. The couple will go to their small cottage now, and the village will return to its rhythms. But you stay behind. You are curious about the others, the ones not in the ceremony, the ones standing at the edges, watching. They are walking now toward the fields beyond the village, toward the sound of pipes and drums. They are walking toward the fair. It has taken you 3 miles to reach this place, and the walk feels like stepping into another world entirely. The harvest fair sprawls across a meadow that opens between the forests. Merchants have set up rough wooden stools, cloth stretched and pinned to create crooked walls. Apples are piled in pyramids. Bolts of fabric catch the afternoon light. Animals, goats, pigs, a few horses, mill about, and the smell of all of them mingles with wood smoke and something sweet, perhaps honey, perhaps fermented cider. The noise is constant and unmarked by any formal structure. People speak, children run, a woman shouts the price of her wares. Someone plays a pipe, and the melody is crooked but insistent. This is where love happens for those who own nothing but their labour. Not in chambers, not by arrangement of fathers and dowries. It happens here, in the spaces between necessity, in the moments the church cannot see. You notice him first because he moves differently through the crowd. He is perhaps 20 years old, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, his hands dark from work. He pauses at a stall selling what appears to be ribbons, that you cannot imagine why a man who works the fields would stop there. He does not pick anything up. He simply stands, looking. You realize quite suddenly that he is waiting, and you understand that this waiting is intentional. This is what he has come for. She arrives perhaps 10 minutes later. You might not have noticed her, if not for the tilt of his head, the subtle shift in his posture. She is younger, perhaps 17 or 18, with her hair bound in a white linen coif that has come slightly loose, wisps of dark hair escaping at her temples. She wears a simple tunic, the colour of undyed wool, and over it a surcoat of a deeper rust. There is nothing remarkable about her, until you see her smile when she notices him. It transforms everything. The smile is quick. It vanishes almost immediately. But it was there. They do not move toward each other immediately. That would be too obvious. Instead, they both turn their attention back to the fair, as though nothing has happened. He examines a wooden spoon with tremendous focus. She looks at the ribbons he had been standing near. You watch this strange performance of simultaneity. They are both in the same space, but their attention is directed elsewhere, their movements seemingly independent. To anyone observing casually, they are two separate people attending the fair. But you have already seen them see each other. You know this is a choreography they have learned. After several minutes, he moves on. His path seems random. He stops to examine a merchant's knives, then pauses to watch a juggler attempting to keep 3 apples in the air. She, meanwhile, has drifted toward the far side of the fair, where the crowd is thinner, where the ground slopes down toward a small stream that runs through the meadow. He follows, but not closely. There is a distance maintained, a gap that would not be remarked upon if someone glanced at them. You follow too, drawn by the strange magnetic pull of their restraint. You have just watched a marriage ceremony in which two people stood before the priest and made promises. Their union was witnessed, blessed, documented. This thing you are watching now, this has no such framework. It is almost the opposite. It is a love constructed entirely from space, from the effort not to be seen together. When he finally reaches the place where she stands, a stretch of bank where the stream moves slowly and the trees lean over the water, she does not turn to face him. She stares at the water as though she has just arrived there, as though she is not expecting him. He stands a few feet away from her, also looking at the water. The distance between them could stretch for miles. "The apples are good this year," he says. His voice is quiet, reasonable, the sort of thing one might say to a stranger one had just encountered. You can barely hear it over the sound of the fair behind you. "They are from Goodman Thurston's orchard," she says, still watching the water. 3 trees bore early. My mother said she has never seen them ripen so fast. This is what passes for flirtation among people who have nothing. Not wit, not poetry, not even much humour. Fruit, weather, the observable fact of growth and ripening. And yet something in the way she mentions her mother, a context that roots them both in the same village, the same patterns of life, feels intimate. He shifts his weight. You notice his feet are bare. He has not bothered with shoes for the walk, though his clothing is clean, and you suspect he made some effort this morning. There is a small scar on his right ankle, pale against his tanned skin. "I will likely be sent to the Northfields next week," he says. "The bailiff said there is work needed with the ditches. I may be there until the rains start." You hear in this statement what it actually is. A warning. A diminishment of future possibility. The ditches are far enough away that he cannot walk back to the village for church on a Sunday. The work is hard enough that he will be exhausted by evening. In saying this, he is preparing her for his absence. He is giving her a reason, so that she will know this vanishing is not by choice. She is quiet for a long moment. You watch her shoulders move as she breathes. The breeze is picking up. It carries the smell of the water, clean and alive, and disturbs the edge of her quiff. That strand of dark hair moves across her neck. "I may be sent to help with the spring planting," she says. "My father's field is near the mill stream. I could go to the Northfields if the work takes me that way." It is not a promise. It is barely even a suggestion. But it is a statement of possibility. It is hope expressed as geography. A stretching of normal paths that might create an intersection. A moment when they might both be in the same vicinity. He reaches down and picks up a smooth stone from the bank. It is the size of a plum, round from the water's constant movement. He holds it in his palm for a moment, then extends it toward her. Not to her hand, just to her, as though presenting it to the space she occupies. She takes it without looking at him. She turns it over in her fingers, examining it the way one might examine something precious. The stone catches the light. It is almost translucent in places, with bands of colour running through it. I found one like this once, she says, and I was very small. My mother told me I should keep it, that it was a stone the water had worked on for 100 years to make it smooth. She said if I kept it, I would remember that time. I have lost it now. I do not know where it has gone. You understand that she is telling him something. She is saying that stones like this are rare. She is saying that she will keep this one. She is saying that she understands the cost of his gesture. A stone is nothing. He could pick up another in 5 minutes. But this particular stone, chosen by him, will be carried with her. It will be placed somewhere in her small space, perhaps in a hidden corner of the cottage she shares with her family, a place no one else will think to look. It will wait there, smooth and round, a thing touched by water and time and his hand. He nods slowly. It is a small movement, barely visible, but you see it. Some transaction has been completed. Some agreement has been reached. I should return, she says. My mother will notice if I am gone much longer. Yes, he says. Mine as well. She turns to walk back toward the fair. He does not follow immediately. Instead, he stands at the bank, looking at the water again, as though the conversation has not happened, as though he has simply been waiting for something he does not quite know how to name. You watch her disappear into the crowd. Her rust-coloured surcoat swallows into the chaos of people and colour. He does not turn to go for several minutes. When he finally does, he does not follow her path. He walks in a different direction entirely, circling back to the fair from a different angle, ensuring that they do not walk in together. The performance is not yet complete. It will not be complete until they are both back in the village, moving through their separate lives, carrying their stones, their knowledge of ditches and distant fields, their understanding that love, for them, is made of the spaces they do not occupy together. You stand on the bank where they stood. The stone they spoke of is indistinguishable from 1,000 others. The stream moves on. The fair continues behind you. The afternoon is turning toward evening. The light is changing, becoming more golden, more slanting. Soon the merchants will begin to pack their wares. Soon families will start the walk back to the village. Soon the fields will be empty again, except for the people who live in them, doing the work that does not stop. But right now, in this moment, you understand something about the architecture of desire among people who have nothing. It is built from small things, stones, words about apples, the knowledge of which fields will soon need attention, the risk of being seen together, which is always present, which is why they cannot be seen together, the certainty that when he is gone to the north fields, she will take out that stone and hold it in her hand, and that the smoothness of it will remind her that something happened, that it was real, that he had chosen her, if only for the moment it took to pick up a single stone and offer it across the space between them. This is peasant love. It is modest. It is slow. It is constructed from the practical realities of a life bound to land and labour. It does not lead to chambers. It leads perhaps to marriage, but not immediately, not through any grand arrangement. It leads through years of small moments like this, through the accumulation of stones and words and carefully timed meetings. It leads through the knowledge that if two people keep encountering each other, if they continue to choose to be near, even at great distance, eventually the village will notice. Eventually, parents will have a conversation. Eventually, there may be a betrothal. Eventually, the very path that began in stolen moments at a fair becomes formalized, blessed, witnessed in the stone church at the edge of the fields. But that is further away than he is. That is beyond the work in the ditches. That is beyond the spring planting. That is beyond the next several seasons of meeting and not meeting, of speaking and not speaking, of the careful, exhausting choreography of love among people who own nothing but the time stolen from their labour. You make your way back to the fair. The sun is lower now. People are indeed beginning to leave. A woman is wrapping up her unsold cloth. A man is loading his animals. The smell of the day is settling, less fresh, more lived in. You pass the stall where the ribbons were sold. You do not see the boy. You do not see the girl. They have each gone back to their lives, their families, their assigned places in the village below. But something has shifted. The very geography of the place is different now, that you know they both walk through it. The field where the ditches will be worked next week has become significant. The path to the north has become a path to him. The place where she will help with planting has become a place where they might both be, moving through the same labour, breathing the same air, in the presence of other workers who will not think to wonder why they stand so close. This is how love works for most people, for the vast majority who have no claim to poetry or courts or elaborate ritual. It works through proximity. It works through small choices. It works through the courage it takes to offer a stone. And it works through the patience of waiting, through the knowledge that sometimes the people you love are close enough to touch, but far enough away that touching is impossible. That the very distance that keeps them apart is also what keeps them safe, what keeps them alive in the eyes of the village, what allows them to love at all. The pipes have stopped playing now. The juggler has given up on his apples. The fair is breaking apart, returning to the land from which it arose, leaving only flattened grass and discarded apple cores, and the memory of commerce and meeting. You walk back toward the village with the other people, your feet following the worn path, the light around you becoming softer, more blue. And somewhere ahead of you, walking separately, are two people carrying smooth stones and the difficult knowledge that love, in its most common form, is made of distance, of waiting, of the hope that the next field work will bring them near, that the seasons will turn in their favour, that what began at the fair will somehow accumulate into something solid enough to be witnessed, blessed, and named. You are walking through a stone corridor now, away from the noise of the fair. The sounds of the marketplace fade behind you. The calling of merchants, the laughter of people dancing, the general hum of bodies and voices compressed into autumn afternoon. The walls here are cool against your skin if you were to reach out and touch them, which you might. There is something about moving away from crowds that makes you want to feel the texture of things, the solidity of walls, the proof that space itself is real. You have left the festival grounds and found yourself in what appears to be a private chamber. It is not grand or richly appointed. This is a room where someone has lived in the dailiness of their life, where objects accumulate not through purchase, but through keeping. There is a small wooden chest near the window. The light from outside is fading now. It is that hour when afternoon becomes something else, when the quality of light changes and things begin to seem both more present and more dreamlike. You can see the chest clearly enough, and something about it draws you. It is old. The wood has darkened with time and handling. The hinges are iron, rough-edged and weathered. You lift the lid. It opens quietly, as though it has been opened many times, as though the motion is familiar to someone. Inside, there is no great fortune, no gold or jewels. There are smaller things, objects that might seem insignificant to anyone passing by. But in this quiet room, in this light, they feel weighted with meaning. You understand, without being told, that these are keepsakes. These are things that someone has held on to, kept close, hidden away where only they could find them. There is a ring, not a wedding ring. That would be worn, would be public. This ring is smaller, simpler. The metal is silver or pewter, something that has darkened with age. The band is thin. There are words inscribed inside, so small that you have to hold it up to the fading light to read them. The letters are worn, softened by time, but you can make them out. They say something simple, something about remembrance, about keeping faith. The words are in French, the language of courtly love, though this person may not have been entirely fluent. The ring was made for this single purpose, to hold these words in a space private enough that only the wearer would see them. You slip the ring onto your finger. It is smaller than modern rings, made for a different time, a different hand. But your finger warms it, and you understand that is exactly what it was for. To be warmed by the hand that wore it, to carry a secret that no one else could see. Beside the ring is a piece of parchment, folded many times. The creases are deep and permanent. The parchment is yellowed, brittle at the edges. You unfold it carefully, and the paper makes a small sound as it opens. There is writing here too, but this is different. This is poetry. The hand is uncertain in places, as though the writer was struggling with the form, trying to bend language into the shape of what they felt. The poem is not beautiful by the standards of the great troubadours. It does not have their polish or their command of verse. But it has something else. It has specificity. It mentions a blue dress that someone wore to a particular gathering. It speaks of the particular way someone turned their head to catch the light. It is concrete and intimate in a way that the courtly verses are not. This poem was written by someone for someone else, not for an audience. It was meant to be read in private, perhaps by candlelight, in a room like this one. You fold the poem carefully back into its familiar creases and set it aside. Your fingers have grown slightly damp from holding the old parchment. You wipe them on your clothes without thinking, the way someone handling fragile things might do. There is a pair of gloves in the chest. They are made of soft leather, dyed a pale colour that might have once been yellow or cream. They are worn at the fingertips. Someone has worn these gloves frequently. They are not practical gloves meant for warmth or protection. They are fine gloves, the kind that would be worn to appear in society, to be seen. The leather still holds a faint scent, something herbal, something that speaks of the hands that held them. You lift the gloves to your nose and breathe in. The smell is nearly gone, barely there, almost a memory of a smell. You understand that someone once held these gloves to their own face and breathed in exactly what you are breathing in now. These are gloves that someone gave as a gift. Gloves are expensive. The leather is worked leather, fine leather. You do not give away fine gloves to someone who does not matter to you. There are small packets of herbs wrapped in cloth scraps. Rosemary. Something that smells like clove. The packets are tied with threads, some red, some green, some white. Herbs were not just for cooking or medicine. Herbs were also symbols. They were gifts. They were tokens of affection. They carried meanings that both the giver and the receiver would understand. Red threads meant love. Green meant hope. The herbs inside were chosen for their scent, for the way they would perfume the room, for the way they would remind someone, every time the packet was opened, of the person who had given it. Someone in this room has received gifts of herbs. Someone in this room has understood, as they held these small cloth bundles, exactly what was being asked of them. You lift another object from the chest. It is a small carved figure. It looks like it might be a horse, though the carving is rough, the proportions uncertain. Someone without much skill in carving has made this. The wood is soft wood, something that splinters easily. The horse is small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. It is worn smooth from handling. You turn it over and over, understanding without being told that someone has held this object for hours, for days, turning it and turning it in their hands, the way people turn worry stones or smooth pebbles. This was carved by hand, slowly, with whatever tools were available. The person who carved it was thinking of someone as they worked. The carving is not meant to be beautiful. It is meant to be a record of time spent. It is meant to be something to hold. There are letters too, dozens of them. They are folded into small rectangles, sealed with wax that has long since hardened and darkened. You lift one carefully. The wax seal is broken. This letter has been opened, read, folded away. On the outside, there is a name written in an uneven hand. It is a name that could belong to anyone, a common name, the kind of name that would not immediately reveal identity to a stranger finding the letter. You do not open the letter. That feels wrong, even in this imagined space. Even though the writer is long dead, and the recipient is long dead, and this moment exists only in imagination. Some things are private, even in ruins, especially in ruins. The letters themselves tell a story about communication. Letter writing in this time is not easy. Parchment or paper is expensive. Ink must be made or purchased. Letters must be delivered by a person who can be trusted not to read them, not to tell anyone what they contained. The act of writing a letter is an act of risk. The act of sending it is an act of vulnerability. Each letter that sits in this chest was meant to be read in private, to be held in the hands of one person only. Each letter was a way of speaking when speaking could not be safe, when words spoken aloud might be overheard, might be reported to parents or guardians or priests. There are tokens made from things found in nature. A smooth stone that came from a riverbed, a pressed flower, dried brown and fragile, a small piece of cloth, embroidered with a pattern so small you can barely see the stitches. These are things that cost nothing to make, things that have no monetary value, and yet they were precious enough to be kept in this chest, treasured, saved. The pressed flower might have come from a garland worn to a dance. The stone might have been picked up during a walk that two people took together, a walk that was significant enough to be remembered. The embroidered cloth might have been made by hand during idle hours, the needle working in poor light, the hand producing something so small and so useless and so deliberate that it could only be a gift, only be love. The chest contains no great treasures. It contains no gold or jewels. It contains the material culture of affection, the physical objects through which people in a world without privacy, without phones or written communication systems, without ways to speak freely, expressed their love to each other. These objects are humble. They are small. They are easy to hide. They are hard to lose. They are the objects that someone could hold in the privacy of this room, late at night, and understand that somewhere another person was holding something similar, was thinking of them, was keeping faith. You sit with the chest open before you. The light is nearly gone now. The window is dark. You do not light a candle. You sit in the dimness and think about the act of keeping these things. Each object here required a decision to keep it. Each token could have been thrown away. Each letter could have been destroyed, as perhaps it was supposed to be destroyed for safety's sake. But someone chose to keep these things. Someone made the decision that the risk of keeping them was worth the comfort of having them. Someone sat in a room like this, perhaps this exact room, and held a ring, or a small carved horse, or a letter, and understood that the object was proof that affection existed, that it was reciprocated, that it was worth the danger of keeping evidence. The material culture of medieval romance is a culture of accumulation and secrecy. It is a culture in which objects become surrogates for words, in which small tokens do the work of declarations that could not be spoken aloud. A ring inscribed with words no one but the wearer would see is a way of declaring love to yourself, of saying to yourself at night, when you are alone, that this love is real and worth remembering. A letter folded into a rectangle and sealed with wax is a way of saying things that could not be said in person, of creating a record of affection that can be referred to later when doubt or distance makes the original declaration seem uncertain. Gloves given as a gift are a way of saying that you think of someone's hands, that you want those hands to be warm, that you want to participate in the ordinary business of keeping someone comfortable. Herbs wrapped in cloth are a way of filling a room with the scent of an absent person, of making their absence present through fragrance. A carved horse, however rough, is a way of spending time thinking of someone, of turning wood into proof of hours spent with another person in mind. The pressed flower is a way of saying that moments matter, that a walk with this person was significant enough to preserve, that ordinary experiences become extraordinary in the presence of someone you love. All of these objects exist in the margins of what was allowed. People in this time period were not supposed to engage in unsupervised courtship. They were not supposed to exchange tokens of affection. They were not supposed to write letters to each other, expressing feelings that had not been sanctioned by their families. And yet they did all of these things. The existence of this chest full of keepsakes is proof of that. The existence of these objects, saved carefully, hidden away, suggests that medieval people found ways to assert their own feelings, their own agency, their own desire to connect with each other, despite the restrictions placed on them. The ring on your finger grows warm as your hand warms it. The letters sit in their envelopes. The carved horse rests in your palm. The gloves lie soft and folded. The herbs release their scent into the quiet room. These are the objects that meant something to someone. These are the tokens of a heart kept secret, expressed in the only ways that were available, preserved for moments of privacy and solitude. When you think about medieval dating, you might imagine arranged marriages and economics and family negotiations. Those things are all true. They are all part of the historical reality. But there is also this. There is also the room full of kept things. There is also the evidence that people found ways to express affection, to create intimacy, to preserve the moments that mattered to them, despite living in a world where such feelings were not meant to be expressed or acted upon. The objects in this chest are proof that love happened. They are proof that it was felt, that it was worth the risk, that it was worth keeping. You close your eyes and sit in the darkness of the room. Outside, night has fallen completely. The world beyond the window is invisible now, known only by sound and by the feel of the air coming through the gaps in the stones. You hold the small carved horse in your hand and imagine the person who carved it. Imagine them working slowly, trying to coax the shape of something beloved from wood that resisted. You imagine them thinking of someone, holding this object in the daylight, and then hiding it away in this chest at night. You imagine them returning to it again and again, holding it, turning it in their hands, reassuring themselves that the love was real, because here was the proof, carved in wood, small enough to hide, small enough to carry in a pocket, close enough to the heart to matter. These objects are all that remain now. The people who held them are gone. The people they were given to are gone. The hands that touched them are dust. But the tokens remain. The ring remains. The letters remain. The gloves remain. The carved horse remains. They remain as evidence of feeling, as proof that affection existed, as testimony to the fact that even in a world of restrictions and limitations and carefully managed courtships, people found ways to express the contents of their own hearts. They found ways to say I love you in private. They found ways to create intimacy despite the lack of privacy. They found ways to preserve moments and connections through objects, through tokens, through the careful keeping of small things. You sit with your hand wrapped around the small horse, feeling its weight, feeling the warmth of your own hand transferred into the wood. Outside, in the darkness, the world continues. But here, in this room, in this moment, you are holding proof of love from centuries ago. You are holding something that someone held. You are touching something that was meant to be touched in private, in secret, in the hours when no one else was watching. You are understanding, through the physical experience of holding this object, what it meant to love in a time when love had to be expressed in these small, careful ways. The light is gone completely now. The window is black. You cannot see the objects anymore, but you can feel them in your hands, can smell the herbs, can sense the presence of the chest beside you. You are alone in the darkness, but you are not quite alone. There is someone else here with you, in a way. There is the person who made these objects, who kept them, who held them exactly as you are holding them now. There is the presence of their affection, their careful preservation, their decision that keeping faith was worth the risk. This is what remains of medieval dating, when you strip away the arrangements and the economics and the family negotiations. This is what remains when you sit alone in a dark room and hold the tokens of a secret heart. The wedding feast has begun, and you are drawn toward it now by the sound of voices rising in the common hall. The tokens and letters have served their purpose. The secret heart has been declared, acknowledged, accepted. What remains is the turning of private longing into public fact, into a meal shared, into vows witnessed, into the simple and enormous reality of two people belonging to each other in the sight of the village. You push through the heavy wooden door, and the warmth hits you first. A great fire roars in the center of the hall, and the air is thick with smoke and the smell of roasting meat. Rushes have been spread fresh on the floor, and they release their green herbal scent with each step. Tallow candles flicker in iron sconces, their light unsteady and golden, and at the far end of the hall, the bride and groom sit at a long table, still wearing their wedding finery. The bride's veil catches the firelight. The groom's hands are large and quiet on the table beside his cup. You have entered the moment when love becomes witnessed, becomes real in a way that the tokens and stolen glances could never quite achieve. This is not the moment of passion. It is not even the moment of greatest intimacy. It is something quieter and more substantial. It is the moment when the community says yes, when the church has said yes, when the law and the custom and the order of the world have all conspired to make this union possible and permanent. And so the feast begins. The trestle tables are laden with what the village's resources can provide. In a lord's hall, there would be pastries folded into fantastic shapes, swans made of sugar, spiced wines that have travelled from distant lands. But here, in this village, the feast speaks of something more honest. There is bread, dark and dense, baked in the communal oven. There is ale, smooth and necessary, served in heavy cups. There is meat, turned on spits for hours until the fat drips and cracks and browns in the fire, and now it lies in heaps on wooden platters, steaming and rich. There are onions, roasted until they are soft and sweet, and herbs, rosemary and thyme, scattered across everything. There are pies made with apples from last autumn's stores, and cheese that the wife of the miller has brought, wrapped in cloth. The smell of it all mingles together. It fills your lungs, and your mouth waters before you have eaten anything. This is what abundance smells like in the medieval world. Not plenty, not excess, but the careful use of what the earth has given and what human hands have preserved. There is music too. Know that you are listening for it. A paper plays a melody that is simple and old, the kind of tune that people know in their bones from childhood. A man beats a small drum with his hand, and the rhythm is steady, hypnotic. Someone begins to sing, and others join in, their voices blending roughly but with clear affection for the song. You move into the crowd and find a place on a bench. The bench is crowded. You are pressed against a woman whose sleeve smells of smoke and sweat, and the herbs she uses to scent her linen. A child sits on your other side, small enough that his feet do not yet touch the floor. He is working seriously on a piece of bread, his face intent with concentration. The crowd around you is loud but not frantic. There is no hurry. The feast will last for hours. The night is long. Food is placed in front of you. Your hands are your utensil. You tear the meat with your fingers and eat it, and the richness of it coats your lips and your teeth. You drink from a cup that is passed to you, and the ale is cool and bitter and immediately warming. You eat bread, you eat cheese, you wipe your hands on a cloth that is provided for this purpose, though it is already stained with the meal of a dozen other guests. This is the physical reality of the medieval wedding feast. It is not refined. It is not separate from the body. It is elemental and real. The bride and groom eat very little. You notice this. They sit at the head of the hall, and food is brought to them, but they pick at it, distracted. The bride's eyes keep moving across the crowd, settling on faces, acknowledging the presence of her village. The groom sits straighter than he did this morning. His shoulders are held differently. He is married now. This has changed something in the way he carries himself, something that everyone can see. As the evening deepens, the pace of the feast slows. Some of the younger children have fallen asleep against their parents' shoulders. The fire burns lower, and someone adds new logs, and sparks rise up the chimney in a brief, bright shower. The music continues, but it changes. The piper shifts into a slower melody. The tempo of the drum becomes more meditative. A woman stands, and her voice rises alone into the hall, singing a song that everyone knows. It is a song about springtime and longing, about fields being planted, about the cycles of the year. Her voice is unremarkable in its beauty, but it is clear and true, and the hall quiets to listen. You listen too, and as you listen, something shifts in your awareness. You understand in this moment what marriage is in the medieval world. It is not the grand romantic love that the troubadours sing about, though that love has its place. It is not the raw passion of stolen moments, though that too is real and acknowledged. Marriage is this. It is being present in community. It is being fed by your village. It is having your belonging confirmed and witnessed. It is the long, slow process of becoming a unit, a household, a partnership that will last until death. It is the knowledge that you will wake tomorrow morning beside this person, and the next day, and for all the days that follow. Whether the spring brings good crops, or whether the winter is harsh. The woman's song ends, and there is a moment of quiet. Then conversation resumes, and the evening continues its slow turning toward night. Some people begin to leave. Parents carry sleeping children out into the darkness. The bride is led away by the women of the village, their hands on her arms, their voices low and knowing. The groom follows sometime later, led by the men, and you understand that this too is witnessed, that even the marriage bed will not be truly private, that the consummation of the union is a communal concern, a matter that the village will confirm and celebrate in the morning. But you do not follow them. Instead, you remain in the hall, where the fire continues to burn, and the rushes on the floor are sticky underfoot with spilled ale. More people have left now. The musicians have packed their instruments. The tables are being cleared. The remains of the feast scraped and gathered. A woman who you do not know moves past you, her arms full of dishes, her face tired and satisfied. The ordinary work of the world has resumed, though the day has been extraordinary. You step outside into the night air. It is cool on your face after the heat of the hall. The stars are visible above you, countless and unwavering. The village is quiet now, or nearly quiet. There are murmurs from windows. A dog barks somewhere distant. The night sounds settle around you like a blanket. You can smell the earth, the grass, the animals in their pens. This is the sensory world of the medieval night, and it is deeply peaceful. The wedding is over now, though its effects will ripple outward for months and years. A new household has been formed. There will be children, probably, within a year or two. The bride will become a wife, will learn the rhythms of her husband's family, will establish herself in her new home. The groom will become a husband, will be responsible for someone other than himself, will grow into a different version of adulthood. They will love each other in the ways that medieval people loved, with care and respect and physical affection and the deep, quiet knowledge of partnership. The romantic letters will be stored away or burned. The tokens will be worn openly now, in daylight, with no need for secrecy. The urgency of courtship will fade into the steadiness of marriage, and seasons will turn. Spring will move into summer. The fields will fill with growing crops. The heat will be sometimes unbearable and sometimes blessing. Autumn will come, and there will be the work of harvest. The knowledge that the stores you create now must sustain you through the winter. Winter will arrive, and you will be grateful for the warmth of bodies pressed close together, for the fire in the hearth, for the knowledge that someone else is committed to keeping you alive. Spring will come again, and the cycle will continue, and the memory of the wedding feast will fade into the ordinary dailiness of a marriage. Perhaps on a warm night months later, the bride and groom will lie awake together, and something they do or say will remind them of the courtship, the tokens, the stolen moments, the risk and hope of it all, and they will smile, or perhaps laugh quietly at how far away that seems now. The person beside them is no longer the object of longing. They are simply the person you wake beside, the person whose breathing you know, whose presence requires no explanation or justification. This is the transformation that marriage makes. It is not less romantic than courtship. It is simply romantic in a different way, in a way that builds slowly and deeply, and is tied to the actual, physical, ordinary reality of living alongside another person. You make your way back toward wherever you are staying. The village paths are dark and you move slowly, feeling your way. Your eyes adjust gradually. The moon is rising, and it is nearly full. And by its light, you can see the shapes of houses, the outline of the church steeple against the sky. Someone is still awake in one of the houses. You can see the glow of a candle in a window. Most people, though, are sleeping now. Their day has been long. Tomorrow will bring ordinary work again. The fields need tending. The animals need feeding. The bread needs baking. The life of the village does not stop for a wedding. It only pauses briefly, gathers briefly to acknowledge the union, and then continues. As you settle into sleep, somewhere in this village, the bride and groom are settling into their new life together. They are lying in darkness, in a bed that is theirs now, in a room that is theirs. What they are feeling: comfort, anticipation, nervousness, relief, joy, exhaustion, blends together in the way that human emotions do when they are not performed for an audience, but simply felt in the dark. This is the true wedding night of the medieval world. Not the public ceremony, not the feast, not the witnessed consummation, but the moment after all of that, when the village has returned to its own homes, when the new household is alone, when the two people can simply be themselves together, without performance, or witness, or expectation. And as you drift towards sleep, the medieval world begins to grow distant. The warmth of the hall fades. The smell of roasting meat becomes faint. The sound of the piper's melody stretches and blurs, becoming almost abstract, almost like the sound of wind in trees, or water running over stone. The bride and groom remain there, in their time, in their world, beginning their marriage. And you return to the present moment, to your own life, to your own bed. The history you have travelled through, the courtship and the tokens, the arrangements and the poetry, the secret moments and the public witness. This is all unfolded in the space between waking and sleeping. It has been a journey through time, through the emotional and sensory truth of human longing and connection. The village grows quieter now. The fire in the hall has burned to embers. The rushes on the floor will be swept out tomorrow, and fresh ones laid down. The bride will wake with her new husband in the morning light, and their marriage will begin in the ordinary way, with hunger, with work, with the needs of the body and the household. But for now, in this moment, just before full night settles over everything, there is stillness, there is rest, there is the completion of a story that is also a beginning. And you let yourself drift now into the deeper waters of sleep, the medieval world fading behind you like a dream that is already half forgotten, leaving only the residue of feeling, the knowledge that love is ancient, that longing is human, that marriage is both ceremony and quiet daily work, and that none of it has changed, really, in all the centuries that separate your time from theirs. Sleep comes now, gentle and sure. The wedding feast is over. The story is complete. The listener returns to rest.